Welcome back to the California Conversation. I'm Tess Abraham. What would you say if you knew that California was paying for the free healthcare of illegal immigrants in our state? Just a few weeks ago, Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he was seeking a $3.4 billion loan from the general fund, as well as an immediate $2.8 billion in funding to cover over-budget expenses of the Medi-Cal program due to paying for the healthcare of illegal immigrants. There is just so much to cover with this topic, and we'll get into all of it today. But before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you stay up to date on all things California politics. Let's just get right into the numbers. Back in 2020, the Legislative Analyst's Office estimated that 1.15 million undocumented immigrants would enroll in the Medi-Cal program. However, in 2024, it was shown that at least, and probably more, than 700,000 illegal immigrants enrolled in the program than were originally projected for. In terms of cost, when the idea of expanding the program to include healthcare for illegal immigrants was first proposed, it was estimated that this would cost the state an additional $3 billion per year. However, for 2024, this actual number ballooned to $9.5 billion. Let me just repeat that. Our state decided to expand Medi-Cal to include covering the cost for illegal immigrants under the premise that it would only cost an additional $3 billion, which that alone is ridiculous and way too much money. But then they overblew the budget by 300%. Can you even believe that? That should not be acceptable. Our government, in no matter, regardless of the illegal immigration component, in no circumstance should they be able to overblow a budget by 300%. Let's just take a practical example to understand this. Let's say that you want to do a full remodel on your kitchen. So you go out and you find a contractor and you want him to give you a quote. So he comes in, he looks at what it would cost to paint your cabinets, to redo your countertops, and to give you new appliances. And he says that he could do it for $5,000. So you hire him. But then let's say he comes in and he smashes up your kitchen. He paints the cabinets the wrong colors and he doesn't give you the appliances that you picked out. Then he comes back to you and says, actually, it cost $15,000 that I've already spent of your money. Would that be acceptable to you? Would you just pay him the amount of money, or would you want answers on where your money went, what he even did, and tell him that that's not acceptable? You agreed on $5,000 and that is the only amount that he will be paid. I would guess that that would not be acceptable to you because it would not be acceptable to me, and that you probably would end up in court against him, holding him accountable for his actions and his waste of your money.
You're exactly right, and you get a point.
The same thing is happening with our California government. They have smashed up our metaphorical kitchen, and they have overblown the budget by 300%, and they need to be held accountable for it. Now, of course, Gavin Newsom is not going to be accountable or answerable for these actions, so his Band-Aid solution is to just beg for more of our money in order to fill the gaps of the program.
Typical.
This $3.4 billion loan has already been approved from the general fund. And now the reality is that he will have to take certain measures in order to meet the budget shortfall in the next fiscal year. What are his options? There's really only two options. You can either increase your revenue to cover the costs, or you decrease your costs in other areas. So this means likely there will be an increase in taxes, or he will have to take out certain tax breaks. That would give more revenue to the budget in order to fill in those gaps. Or he has to reduce expenses in other areas, which means cutting funding to other programs, which is also a likely route that he would go down. Which that brings us to the impact of this budget shortfall on our state and on your life. Because the basic fact is that more money spent in one area means less money spent in another. So $9 billion spent toward funding healthcare for illegal immigrants means $9 billion less spent to other services like funding fire departments, police departments, parks, and other services that directly benefit your life and maybe you want to see funding go toward. And then there are bigger questions, especially about Medi-Cal, that need to be asked, because if we're using the general fund to bail out these budget shortfalls, then it begs the question, do there need to be policy changes to actually change what we are funding Medi-Cal with? Does there need to be federal aid? Questions like that. In other words, this loan is a Band-Aid fix that will not stop the bleeding underneath, and it is ridiculous, to put it mildly. And quite frankly, continuing to slap these not permanent fixes on bigger problems is just exhausting. But the good news is that with 7 Weeks Coffee, you can power through the exhaustion and continue fighting for real and effective change in our state. 7 Weeks Coffee is a family-owned company on a mission to live out their values in the marketplace while still providing a high-quality product. Did you know that large coffee distributors actually sell coffee that's laden with mold or pesticides or other toxic chemicals? And on top of that, they pay their farmers mere pennies on the dollar. 7 Weeks Coffee is totally different from this. They pay their farmers through direct trade, which means that their farmers are paid fair and reasonable wages, and they actually know the farmers that are growing your coffee products. Plus, these are award-winning specialty coffee farms, which means that their coffee is mold-free, pesticide-free, ultra-low acidity, and organically farmed. But the best part is their mission. Did you know that at 7 weeks in utero, a baby is the size of a coffee bean and a heartbeat is clearly detectable? That is why 10% of their sales go directly towards supporting pro-life pregnancy centers across all 50 states in America. They have been able to contribute over $800,000 to these organizations and save thousands of unborn lives. So if you love coffee and you love babies, then you should use my discount code TESSABRAHAM at checkout to get 10% off your order. This is one super easy step that we can be taking to show up in the marketplace, to support companies that share our values, and to actually buy high quality products that still support missions that we want to see carried out. So don't go to Starbucks to buy your coffee when you know that they are directly opposed to your values, and shop at 7 Weeks Coffee instead. Again, use my code TESSABRAHAM to get 10% off and to support the show. Now, the way to actually address these over-budget costs of the Medi-Cal program would be for our government to seriously consider rolling back the expansion of providing free healthcare to illegal immigrants, which is the direct root cause of why it was over budget by 3 times what was initially promised. But the California government won't do that because they believe that it is their moral responsibility to provide free healthcare to illegal immigrants across our state, regardless of how much more money it costs the taxpayer or how much money it directly takes away from other programs that it could be funding. So the real question boils down to, should California pay for free healthcare for illegal immigrants? Now, I believe the answer is no, as I'm sure that you can tell, but let me walk you through the reasons why. First, it is not true that our government has a moral obligation to provide free healthcare to anyone in the state. You may hear the phrase healthcare is a human right in conversations like this a lot, but I disagree with that. Healthcare is not a human right. Healthcare is a commodity. Human rights are something that are inalienable, intrinsic to people simply by virtue of being human. So we say that people have the right to life. Why? Because life and living is intrinsic to being a human being. The government doesn't grant you life. They set up laws and institutions that protect your right to life. Healthcare is not a right. Healthcare is a commodity. It's something that you buy. Healthcare requires that doctors and nurses and other professionals go to school. They pay for their education. They get specially trained and skilled to be able to provide you with a service in the marketplace that you have to pay for. No one is entitled to free healthcare in the same way that no one is entitled to buy a house. I may really want to buy a house. I may say that it would completely increase my quality of life to live in a 3-bedroom house rather than live in a small apartment. But that doesn't mean that I'm entitled to it from the government. If I don't have the money to pay for a house, or if there are no houses in my area to buy, then my human rights are not being violated by that. I simply just cannot afford or cannot purchase a home in the area that I live in. The same is true with healthcare. So I don't believe that the government bears the moral obligation to provide free healthcare for anyone, illegal immigrants included. At the end of the day, you bear the responsibility for your health and the health of your family, and that goes for citizens as well as illegal immigrants. But then when it comes to immigration status, there's also an argument that says if illegal immigrants pay taxes or they pay into the system, then they are therefore entitled to gain certain social benefits, one of which could be access to free healthcare. But this is a fundamentally flawed argument because it basically argues that you can break the law, but then do things after the fact to make up for it. Let's take another practical example. Let's say that you own a house and someone breaks into your house when you're not there and decides that it's now their house. You would obviously say, well, that's wrong. You can't just break into my house. It's still my house. But what if they started making payments on the house? They started paying for the mortgage. They kept up with general upkeep. They were out in the yard doing gardening. Now, could they claim it's their house because they directly pay into it? Obviously, the argument would be no. No sane person would believe that now they own that house. It's theirs. They didn't go through the legal process of paying you money, giving you an offer that you have to accept for your house, of the title transfer to say now that it's theirs. And so you would say it's still your house. They don't have a right to be in there. Or let's take another example. Let's say that you're at the store and there's a really cute baby in a shopping cart and someone comes up, they decide that they like that baby, they want that baby, and so they take that baby home. Obviously, again, we would say that's not their baby, that's wrong. But what if they love the baby, they feed the baby, they pay for all of the baby's expenses? Now could they say, well, it's my child, I pay for them, I feed them, I clothe them, I do everything for them, so they're mine? No, that again would just be ridiculous. It wouldn't make them their child. They don't have the right to raise, love, and protect that child. It's not their child. The same is true with healthcare. Illegal immigrants have entered our country illegally. They've broken the law to be here. They are not entitled to the social services of our country. This is really important because we can't have a society of law and order if we legitimize these actions by saying that you can just break the law and then after the fact make up for it by doing some good things. If you as an immigrant really want to contribute to society, then you should respect the laws that order that society and come here through the legal process that is required under the law. But ultimately, it's clear that our state paying for the healthcare costs for illegal immigrants is downright unfair. It flies in the face of federal immigration law that says that it is illegal for them to have entered the way that they did in the first place. It places the fiscal burden on taxpayers who now have to pay for the healthcare of those who are in our country and in our state, not through the legal process. And it incentivizes illegal immigration because it essentially says you can come here, you can come to a state like California, you can gain access to social services for free with no repercussions. This is yet another example of our state government placing the welfare of others over the welfare of its own citizens and legal residents. The money spent on the healthcare for illegal immigrants could be better spent on services for Californians who are here through the legal process, who pay their taxes, and who have the right to be defended and protected by their state government. It is completely absurd that the California government would prioritize those who have broken the law over its own law-abiding citizens and residents, and it has real-life consequences. And like I mentioned in last week's episode, this is completely unpopular with California voters. 60% of likely voters in the 2026 midterm elections said that they do not support California funding the free healthcare for illegal immigrants. So it is time for the California government to start listening to the will of the voters, start putting its own citizens first, and to stop the madness. If you want the full breakdown of California's budget shortfall due to funding healthcare for illegal immigrants, you should check out episode 33 of my full-length podcast linked below. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope it was helpful for you as you navigate life in our state and that you even learned something new. You can follow me on social media at It's Tess Abraham, and I'll see you back here next time for another episode of the California Conversation.